Offense wins games, defense wins championships, and sometimes the luck of the Irish prevails. And that's kind of the case for Riley Leonard, Marcus Freeman, and Notre Dame as they advance 23-13 over the Texas A&M Fighting Aggies. Welcome on into the SEC Unfiltered postgame show. He's Dave Shumate. I'm Cole Thompson, coming to you live, breaking down everything that we saw tonight in front of the fourth largest field ever at Kyle Field. 23-13, the final. The Mike Elko era starts off in a very traditional way that I think we expected, though the outcome did differ for Dave and I in terms of what we thought was going to be that last drive. Real quickly, make sure that you subscribe down below because this is your number one source for all things SEC. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Thank you for joining us throughout the entire offseason, but now it's real time. It's no longer talking time. It is time to sell the score on the field, and the best way to do so is by following us on podcast form. Follow us on the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We are live, and we're going to be everywhere moving forward at SEC Unfiltered. Follow Dave on Twitter at Mach10 Sports. Follow me on Twitter at Mr. Cole Thompson. And to keep up with the number one source for all things SEC, visit SECUnfiltered.com. This episode of Postgame Press Conference is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go use the promo code SECU at prizepicks.com or sign up to get an instant play when you use your first bet, $50 plus. PrizePicks.com, promo code SECU. Shumate, the Mike Elko era started off with the bang in terms of what he does best. Defense, defense, defense. The problem is it takes two sides of the coin for you to walk away with the win. And unfortunately, that's going to be an area where moving into next week's matchup before they go travel down to the swamp, Colin Klein and Connor Weigman better be speaking the same language.
Dude, 100%. I mean, not skipping ahead to that too far, but that looks like it's going to have to say a must win, but it's going to be a needed win for both those teams in Florida and Texas A&M. Yeah, it was kind of, you said it, the game went exactly how I thought it would. I mean, it hammered the under. I thought it'd be a low-scoring affair. I thought both defensive lines and defensive fronts had a massive advantage against both offensive lines. Quarterbacks, Riley Leonard playing in his first game at Notre Dame in a road game against the coordinator who's familiar with him. You saw that stuff. Connor Weigman still had major question marks, in my opinion, coming in. I know a lot of people were high on him, but again, it was almost one of those things like you see the raw ability and the small sample sizes he had, but it almost was one of those things too. It's like, well, can it translate over to the field? He just looked like a deer in headlights at times. But Al Golden is an under-the-radar defensive coordinator in college football. He's done a phenomenal job the last 2 years as the coordinator at Notre Dame. And yes, I'm talking about the former University of Miami head coach as well. But yeah, the offense, I mean, it wasn't all Connor Weigman, too. It was Colin Klein. Even that last drive there where they could have went and tied it. I mean, the third down and fourth down calls there were bad. Third down, you're trying to run it. You're trying to get into – I understand that. Fourth down call, you're throwing a central, a horizontal pass. A timing route that even if the defender isn't there, it's got to be perfect. I don't know. I feel like Colin Klein left a lot of meat on the bone from a standpoint of that was a really poorly – called game. You can tell Elko at the end was pissed. He was even like, hey, just run the ball. Let's get us out of here. Like, stop throwing the football. Like, I don't know. It was a very underwhelming game offensively. I still think A&M doesn't have a lot of weapons really around. I mean, ever since Ruben Owens went out, there's no real weapon. Outside, where was Moose Muhammad tonight?
Yeah.
No Thomas isn't there.
No Donovan Green.
Walker's got some opportunities. And again, it's not really just you're looking at one unit. It's like it's their problem on offense. That's why they're the issue, why they can't get anything going. It's like, well, the offensive line can't protect to give Connor Weigman time. Connor Weigman is inconsistent, throwing inaccurate passes. Receivers don't get a lot of separation. I understand it. Notre Dame's got one of the better secondaries in the country. But overall, just, man, how much better can this offense get? It can get better, obviously. It's week one, but how much better? Again, we knew the defense would show up. I mean, people are going to talk about they lost. But, hey, tip the cap to Mike Elko and Jay Bateman as well. They called a hell of a game. Nick Scorton was blowing up plays. We saw Will Lee making plays, the K-State transfer from that plays corner for A&M. I was fired up about the A&M defense, and I think they can build off that. I don't feel as confident now as I had them at 9-3, 10-2. Now I do think again it could be a little bit of an overreaction. I think they're back in that 8-4 range. That Florida game will be massive though. But yeah, a lot of stuff got to work on offensively. A lot of stuff. The game was there to be won. It was there to be won at your place. Defense gave you a chance. Offense just couldn't take enough of those opportunities when they had chances.
Dave, what do you want to do? Do you want to start off with the positives or the negatives?
Let's end on a good note. Start off with the negatives.
Let's start with the negatives. Connor Wegman, it was a game to where you are going to look back and the punchline culture is going to be potent as all hell tonight. You are going to have A&M fans. You are going to have Longhorn fans. You are going to have the Fighting Irish fans. You're going to have everyone and their mother comment on this performance. And you want to know what? Unfortunately, people like me have to eat crow. I have been a very big proponent of Connor Wegman. I believe when I see him actually be able to deliver what that potential is. But therein is the key word. And we have got to stop doing what we always do with Texas A&M, including several players, putting the wagon before the horse. If the potential, when he is hitting his stride, when, if, this, that, you can't keep doing it because of, again, this was a prime opportunity. And I get it. I understand. This is going to be one of the best secondaries that you will face off against all year if you are Colin Klein and you are Connor Wegman. I'm not going to give away any discredit in that sense. Benjamin Morrison and Xavier Watts, that interception, that major turnover when they're piling into the red zone, when you should be walking away with at least a Randy Bond field goal, you see why this is one of the best secondaries that has ever played underneath Marcus Freeman. They don't have talent like that in the past coming into South Bend, Indiana. You see it in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. You see it in Fayetteville, Arkansas. You'll see it in Knoxville, Tennessee. You'll see it in Athens, Georgia. You don't see it in South Bend. But when you have the right coach, that's what you get, and you saw that. But at the same time, inconsistent throws, and for the entire first half, as bad as the wide receivers looked at times, and we'll get to that in a moment, it just felt like every single throw was a hair off. Either a second too late, a second too soon, a little bit overshot. He never got that confidence. And that is the entire drive killer for any quarterback. You have to start fast, not because you need to deliver constantly against a team like Notre Dame, but it's for the confidence. It's to establish an identity. And when your running attack can only move the ball so adaptly and so quickly, you have to have your curveball. You have to have your slider. That is where you get a five-star quarterback to deliver. And unfortunately, this is one of those games where you didn't see it. You saw almost none of it. You watched a little bit of the mobility, and you saw a few times where they were able to convert on second and short. Outside of that, it was a very underwhelming performance by number 15, a quarterback that myself and many others who work in this industry were extremely high on, and we have got to stop at the potential stuff. We have got to stop saying potential. We just got to see results.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to have some time to make up for. There's going to be opportunities. But again, it's what our guy Andy here. Andy, I appreciate you listening to the comments. I'm putting your comment on. No offensive identity. Yeah, it was kind of just like, man, I think a lot of people – question's probably not the right word. I think Colin Klein's a good offensive coordinator within his own right.
I don't think anybody's going to doubt that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying you did. I think just Connor Wegman, we may be looking at the end of the year, and I kind of lean there right now. And that's easy. I'm a prisoner of the moment. But it's always been a thought in my head heading into the season. I was high on A&M because I think their defense is going to carry them and give them a chance in most games. But it is one of those things we may look back on the end of the year and be like, God, it's just Connor Wegman came back and you hired Colin Klein. It's like, I just don't see the fit. I don't know the dynamic of how that ultimately broke down Mike Denbrock and Colin Klein. I know it came down to those two as the final OCs. Those are the two guys that actually played tonight. So I don't know if Elko chose Colin Klein over him or not, or over Mike Denbrock. But it's like, man, I mean, Colin Klein's only ever had Skylar Thompson at K-State, who's a runner between the tackles. Will Howard, similar. He was a runner himself as a player. Like, it may never marry up this year. And it's just kind of like, huh, interesting. Like, I don't know. I mean, Cole, what's your thoughts now? I mean, what's the ceiling floor for A&M for you now as we speak, like after game one, right after?
Well, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, if you just want more information on things that go on behind closed doors, this is why we hired Dave Shumate. He used to work in personnel. He just kind of gave you an actual inside scoop that Denbrock and Colin Klein were the finalists for the A&M job, and they went toe-to-toe against each other. And ultimately, a veteran quarterback was the reason why one team won. Here's my thing. You have a mobile quarterback. And I'm not going to go ahead and say that you had to pull the trigger yet and move over to Jalen Henderson because of that's unfair to Connor Wegman. We know that Connor Wegman, from a skill standpoint, has more potential and upside than Jalen Henderson. But when it's not working and you just need to see some identity click, you need to see something change to get the gusto moving, to start seeing first down conversions, start seeing a more up-tempo. Why not go to him? Why not? You have Marcel Reed. Marcel Reed in the bowl game last year against Oklahoma State showed you some potential that he could move outside the pocket and actually be a little bit of an elusive runner, and he's got a good arm. And that's a young quarterback that you can build around, and one that maybe Colin Klein feels more adaptive to. And so those are some early mistakes that when you look at, that's going to be a coaching decision that will ultimately come back to either bite Mike Elko in the keister when he's looking at what the schedule looks like, and they're 8-4, they're potentially 9-3, and it could be 10-2 and in that playoff hunt because you didn't decide to switch things up. It's a big deal. It absolutely is. I always thought this team was 8-4. I figured that I was done trying to put the wagon before the horse because I've gotten to cover this team up close and in person for 4 years. I was there during the Jimbo Fisher times, and it was dark and desolate in a lot of the moments where you didn't get an inside scoop. You got told that you were dumb at what you did and that you weren't great at your own job. Meanwhile, you watch as Jimbo doesn't change a damn thing about his offense, and the results paved the way to him having the biggest blowout of his entire career. And the decision was made by Ross Bjork and company to be fired after that moment. So you went out on a high note and there was nothing to say. But at the same time, I was done letting A&M be a victim of the moment and a priority of the moment. I knew they were going to play well in big games because they always do play well in big games. And that's where the defense steps up. But when you go, and unfortunately, I have to read the stat line and to discuss me, 12 of 30 and average 3.3 yards per pass attempt, you have to make a change. And the problem is that you could say the running back room did its job. It did. Le'Veon Moss was awesome. That was one of the few bright spots that when you look at offensively, you know that that is your first pitch. 70 yards, 3.8 yards per attempt, 1 rushing touchdown. He brought life back into Kyle Field. That was what you needed at the right time. As a unit, 4 yards per play against one of the best defensive lines in the country. It's very hard to argue with that. But you had to change something up. And that is where a young coach that has not been in this situation before, has not gone up against these type of matchups, even though Mike Elko last year with the quarterback that was standing on the opposing sidelines was in Durham and beat a top 10 team, you need to make those type of adjustments. Those are things that you have to do and you know you should do. And that doesn't mean that you don't go back to Wigman. That doesn't mean that eventually you don't go ahead and give him another opportunity. What you do is you do what's best for your team, and you don't worry about the quarterback's feelings. This is a top 10 game. This is a game that could easily pigeonhole you and catapult you to the top of conversations, to every bit of the entire your Sunday morning headline material. And instead,
are you starting Wigman and Gainesville in 2 weeks?
As of right now, like I have to. But if he does, if there is a moment where you
have a short leash,
if there is a moment where you start watching him make the same mistakes, I got 2 quarterbacks waiting in the wings. I got 2 guys, and I've seen them, and I've seen what they can do.
Yeah, I'm with you. That performance tonight was bad enough where, yeah, you're probably rolling into Gainesville in 2 weeks, and you're like, hey, listen, like if it ain't going well in the first half, like we're going to have to make some kind of change here, right? Just to give ourselves some kind of change. Well, especially if you're down like 10-7 or something. It's like, dude, our defense is again playing their ass off. And it's just like, dude, we can't generate anything offensively. We're going to go 6-6 with a phenomenal defense. Like,
and that's the main thing. Is that also like, but I'm not going to go ahead and just throw only Wigman under the bus.
Yeah.
There were multiple drives.
There was just no identity offensive.
How many times wide receivers just couldn't clean up their routes, could not finish at the top of their routes, could not win at point of attacks? Let me just read you off these numbers. Ja'Day Walker was the leading target, 31 yards. Cyrus Allen, Trey Watson, Le'Veon Moss, and Noah Thomas combined for 69 yards. Nobody else. There was no Donovan Green. There was no Moose Muhammad being involved in. There was no Isaiah Williams. There was no Ernest Campbell. There was no Terry Busey. Nobody was involved in that. And so my question is, when you started to watch as these players couldn't create separation, and you have a young guy like Isaiah Williams that is known for his speed, somebody like Terry Busey, who's been showing up in camp and has been literally the talk because of his flashing speed, one deep shot. Because what does Wigman do? He knows how to throw it deep. Give him a shot. Give them one play. Let him line up one-on-one opposite of Benjamin Morrison. Go ahead and throw Cyrus Allen. Force Morrison to play down. Take a shot. What about Donovan Green? Like that was a guy that was Wegman's security blanket back in 2022 when they beat number 5 LSU at home. Where was he tonight? And Trey Watson had a moment where he looked promising, and I thought the tight ends were going to be more involved. But the fact is, wide receivers couldn't get open. You couldn't create separation with tight ends. Linebacker play was phenomenal in coverage tonight, I thought, for Freeman's defense. Everywhere, top to bottom, you watch as they had every single counteractive move. And that is where you're playing a game of chess. Where, again, I am sorry if you are one of these people that does not understand that this was a great game, because it was, because you see the final score and it says 23-13. Folks, I promise you, great defensive performances on both sides are hard to come by. You watched an exceptional defensive showcase. And I'm going to tell you what, Notre Dame will be one of the top 2 teams that you face all year simply because of the way that their defense is delivered.
Oh, yeah, you won't see as many well-schemed defenses and fundamentally sound defenses and just veteran defensive guys that have played a ton like they will tonight, like a disciplined defense that's not out of their gaps or gap sound, overall technique sound. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that from top to bottom from a standpoint of what Al Golden's done with that defense. A&M to me, just a little that was a major concern coming in. It's like they're going to have to hit 2 or 3 explosive plays, I think, for a score, because I just do not consistently see either of these teams driving on each other, much less A&M, just because Notre Dame had such the matchup advantage on the outside. And, I mean, it was worse than I thought. I mean, it was worse than I thought offensively. I thought it'd be low scoring. I didn't think it'd be that bad, though, from an A&M standpoint.
I think that everyone. I will say.
What was their longest play from scrimmage? Do you know? Do you have that?
One, A&M or Notre Dame?
Yeah, A&M offensively.
A&M's longest play from scrimmage, I believe, was the pass to Trey Watson for 18 yards.
Yeah.
I believe that was their longest play, and it was the only play that Watson got involved. That was it. So again, they had no explosive plays. Where you watch earlier in the game against Miami on when we did the post game show, then Graham Mertz had 95 yards. There were more explosive plays by Cam Ward, and that's not including the rest of the dink and dunk plays that he had. There was nothing. This was literally like, imagine you're going to a fireworks stand and trying to buy the most MAGA son of a bitch, biggest thing that you could freaking find, and you had to settle for sparklers. Like, that's what it is. Like, that was what you got in terms of spark. Oh, yay. I will say, you and I both did the pregame, and we talked about this, and Chris and I did the pregame, and we did the preview. I believe that this was going to be a defensive performance. That was exactly what happened. I also thought this was going to come down to one explosive play. And it did. Yeah. But it came from Jeremiah Love. And we got to talk about that. The killer for A&M tonight, they were almost perfect defensively. It is very hard to complain, even though they allowed 5.8 yards per run, even though they allowed Riley Leonard to be successful on 4th down conversions. They held Notre Dame 2 of 12 on 3rd down attempts and 5.1 yards per pass attempt. And they got weapons. I mean, I'm going to be completely honest. When you look at the weapons, you're eventually going to see guys like Mitchell Evans. You're going to see guys like Jaden Greenhouse. You're going to see Chris Mitchell, the wide receiver from FIU, finish with 200-yard passing games. Because number one, they're in a Mike Denbrock offense. And number two, they got talent. And A&M did a good job shutting them down. But just those 3 plays, that was it. It was terrible.
Yeah, Stubby. Look at our guy Stubby here. He's right.
No, he's talking about Oklahoma, I think.
Oh, he's talking about.
He's talking about.
No, but I mean, Notre Dame wasn't better on 30. Yeah, they were 2 for 12. A&M was 4 for 13 on 3rd down. And again, it was kind of going back to, I thought it'd be a highly penalized game for Notre Dame. They had 11. Like, I just thought going into that environment, everything shook out the way I thought. I think it sounds like you did too, from a low scoring affair. I just thought if this game was anywhere but Kyle Filler, I would have picked Notre Dame to win the game. But it went out exactly how I thought. It just, the game was there for the taking. It just, I didn't expect Texas A&M's offense to be that inept. That's probably what it comes down to. And I don't think anybody did. I mean, you tell in our comments what A&M fans and people are saying on social media. It's just I was like, the defense was probably even a little better than people thought. I think most people assumed it was going to be pretty good.
Let's talk about it for a minute.
Yeah, offense, it was just like.
I think Dave might have frozen on us.
No,
yeah, I think Dave. Unfortunately, you decided to freeze on us. Let's turn to the positives because there were some. Mike Elko takes the field. Power's playing. It's back to Kyle Field. It's awesome. Fans are rocking. It's an exciting moment. It's a new era. It's the best era of A&M football that we have seen in a hot minute. Back in the field. I made the comparison to Deadpool and Wolverine. Mike Elko was the anchor of that Jimbo Fisher era because he always had stellar defense. It was back. It was 100% back tonight. Everything that you looked at, it's better than advertised. And I think that that's what you hold your hat on. Guys who were a part of other systems that never were able to find their stride just look completely. Scooby Williams is a perfect example of this. If you go back and you watch his film last year at Florida, and you watch the way that he was completely out of place and the way that he was over-exceeding angles, he was running past wide receivers, he was missing targets in the open field. He was such a difference maker tonight. He was that run stop on third down where you were watching Jeremiah Love try to push that's a reason why A&M was able to stay in the game. You watch the way that Cassius Howell played. You watch the way that Nick Scorton came on in and demanded respect from everyone. Shamar Stewart, they shifted him inside. They played him on the edge. He did so much of everything. The fact that his defense was already up to par like this, that is your saving grace if you are a Texas A&M fan. If we can get the offense somewhat consistent, anything, any type of idea, we are at least going to be in games. Because that defensive performance, this is one of those times where you look like it is a shame that we had to play this great defensively and not be able to come away with anything offensively. Because I'm not sure you're going to find a defensive performance like this again.
No, it's a tough one. That's a tough pill to swallow for your defense football. It's like you just gave up a touchdown in the wrong spot, boys. If it was early in the first half, nobody would be thinking about it. But again, nobody's blaming the defense. It's the offense. They got to get back to the drawing board, figure some things out. Just bad fit. I have less confidence. It just looked like it was. I didn't think it was a good fit with Colin Klein and Connor Wigman right off the bat. But now it's like, all right, you're in season. You go back to the drawing board. Man, that's a lot to ask. I have major concerns with them offensively. It'll be interesting. 2 weeks, big game for both Florida and A&M.
If you are a A&M fan and you're trying to just find some solace, is the biggest thing that you can take away that it's game one and this might be the toughest opponent that you face for the next month and a half. Because you got to look at their schedule. They play McNeese State, they play Florida, and we know that Florida is going to be tough because of, yes, the Swamp does have that environment, but you don't know if you're going to get Graham Mertz. You don't know if DJ Lagway is going to be up to speed of this offense. You don't know what you're going to get in that run game. And by the way, your defense balled out probably more so than I would say Miami did at times in this game against Florida. So you feel good about that. Arkansas, we don't know what we're going to really get.
Arkansas, Pine Bluff. You'll find out about Arkansas next week.
That's what I'm saying. Let's pump the brakes on Taylon Green for Heisman. Bobby Petrino gets the last lap over Aggie Land. Let's not do any of that until we see them play against a real team like Oklahoma State or one that gives you a better indication about where they are. Your next major test may not be until Missouri. And even still, Missouri, we don't know what they are right now. So you look at where you are, and that's the positive. That is, I think, the positive of all of it.
Yeah, our guy Jason Matthews said, played well defensively. You gave up 356 yards. Dude,
you also held him to 2 of 12 on third down.
Yards given up in college football now is a pretty irrelevant stat.
It's absolutely egregious. Are you getting the fact that the fact here? Let me just go through the drive real fast because I hate to be that guy, but let's just go through the drive real fast and talk about how this team went. Punt, field goal, punt, end of half, turnover on downs, touchdown, punt, touchdown, field goal. If you're forcing more field goals than more punts than you're forcing field goals, it's a good performance. It is. And by the way, your defense was out there consistently because your offense couldn't do anything. It was more sleek and slow than molasses that is freezing up in the middle of winter.
I think this guy just thinks you're an A&M fan here at this point.
I'm not an A&M fan. I don't care about that. No, I'm saying that regardless, a type of performance like this defensively does not come around every so often.
Anybody saying that wasn't a good defensive performance in modern day college football by A&M doesn't know what they're looking at.
Now, before we get on out of here, let me just ask you, that performance tonight, from a Notre Dame perspective, do they look like a playoff team?
Whew, that's a good question. Playoff team, I'd probably lean no right now because I think that offense has to get better, but I think they will be in the playoff. Like just off record wise, like I don't know if they'd end up being like right now. After that, I don't know if I want to say they're a top 12 team in the country. I do think it was sloppy, even though
They're
I
a top 10 team. I think that defensively, if their offense is better, they could be a top 10 team.
I still think it's too early right now to again. Everybody played so many different opponents. So it's like to be fair to you, it's like you got to give Notre Dame some credit for that. Hey, they went on the road to Kyle Field in a hostile environment and won a game. It wasn't pretty offensively, but they did win it. I still just want to see a little bit more from them offensively to say there'd be a playoff team, but I think it will end up being one just because I think the schedule will benefit them. I don't see them losing 3 games, and at 10-2, Notre Dame's going to be in.
It's unfortunate because of, again, we know that Notre Dame's schedule plays extremely well in their favor. If their offense can look better, their defense is going to keep them in games, is going to keep them low scoring. They're going to be great in that sense. And again, if you are A&M, I understand. And we'll end on this on some positive note. It's your first game with a brand new offensive coordinator for the first time in 6 years that isn't led by a Jimbo Fisher type of background. Already, that's a win. That's just a win because of you have new change and a new adaptability. But again, this was always going to be a tough test regardless because Marcus Freeman has built a team that is good enough defensively to finally get to a college football playoff. Colin Klein, you got some answers going in next week against McNeese State, and they probably have to be almost completely solid before you go travel down to Gainesville, Florida. That is going to be, I think, for both these teams, a very, very, very big fork in the road for the trajectory of their seasons. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I would love to be the fly on the wall when they're reviewing the offensive film tomorrow afternoon with Elko and the offensive staff. That would be an interesting conversation there. But, yeah, I mean, they got to look ahead to 2 weeks. I mean, obviously they got next week, but 2 weeks is the next time we really get to see if this A&M's offense has made any incremental progress at all.
Sunday Fun Day, back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern. For anybody that wants to check it out, Chris Phillips will be joining us. We'll be recapping everything that we saw on week 1, from the upset in Nashville to the dumpster fire that was Florida's offense to a new start of an era underneath Kalen DeBoer. Texas Longhorns find a way to not only shut down Torrey Horton, but also be able to deliver a performance where Arch Manning got a larger sound of applause than any bit of the first team offense. So much more. So make sure you hit subscribe down below. Make sure that you also follow us on the podcast systems. Make sure that you're checking us out on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Make sure you check him out at Mock 10 Sports. Check me out at Mr. Cole Thompson. And make sure that you're checking out all of our great work found at SECUnfiltered.com. Sunday Fun Day back tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central. For Dave Shumate, I'm Cole Thompson. Have a good night and have a happy, safe Memorial Day weekend. Later.